Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday, it's April 14th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And in the end, you can see it's really just a range day. We spent most of the day um, above, well, let's just see exactly where this is. Most of the day we spent above 2079 and below basically 2090. That's the way I would call it. So about a 10-point range. There were some which is enough to have some movement for a change. So it was a pretty nice trading day, to be honest. The trends were relatively obvious. Got a little iffy, questionable right in here. And right in here early on, it was a little bit questionable as well. But that's what really, when this reversed right here and went higher, that pretty much is kind of, unless we keep going higher, that pretty much is telling you that, hey, this is probably going to be a range type day. And let me show you this. When you have this big leg down and then you have a two-legged correction, I would look for this leg to be a measured move. And you can see if you measure that leg, and you move it over, it's pretty much a perfect measured move. It may be a tick off, but it's so close. You can see that we had a measured move. We maybe went a tick or so further. Um, and if you measure this little double move in between, you can see it's fairly close to a measured move too. Um, so anyway, you got one leg down, a two-legged correction, and there's even a two-legged correction within the two legs. And you may not see that now, but study the chart until you can see it. And that's what you got to learn to be able to spot. That really helps you. And when you get a two-legged correction in this lower high here, you got to be careful going short right here because you had a really strong move up. When you get that trap right there and that reversal, man, that's a great move down. And if you catch that, you ride it all the way. Any runners, if you catch that with runners, or if you're trying to catch a swing trade, um, you can ride it all the way down. And then guess what? It turns around and it comes all the way back up. Not quite as fast as it came down the first two times. Uh, it actually moved pretty quickly from most of the way, and then we had a little correction, a new high, and then we just kind of got hung. We just couldn't, we can't get above that 2090 area really. Every time we get in that area, it's really the 2100 area. We're really close to that again. Seems like every time we get around it, as you can see, we sell off. We got there few weeks back and we sold off pretty quickly, and prices have been trying to get back. So never count this the long-term bull market, even though it's not moving really quickly, it just keeps going higher. So don't count it out until we consistently start selling off day after day after day. And even then, there'll probably be some strong rallies in there. So just be aware of that. But I did want to show that to you right up. You got your first leg down, and then you got a measured leg down, and there's a two-legged correction in the middle of that, and within the two-legged correction there's a two-legged correction, and basically a two measured legs. So um, that's telling you something. It looked like we were going to repeat that here, but we got within the range and it held, and we went higher. We broke a little higher than the last one and got a little correction, and we just kind of hung in that for the rest of the day. So but let's back out and talk about the trades. I'm going to back this out just a hair where we can see a little better. And you can see we were working down early. We had a real tight channel working down. We had a break. We had a little two-legged correction there. And then it tried to go lower. This is a nice second entry short. You figure we're going to test this low again, or attempt to. So this is a pretty decent setup. We had the break of this little correction, a new high, and you get a second entry short there. That's exactly what you want to see. I would have preferred to see this turn down off the EMA, but this is a big move, and this is about a 50% pullback, which is real common in any move. And if you follow, for those of you that that look at the fibs and things like that, 50% pullbacks are very, very common. And so that's what you got right here. You basically pull back 50% of the way and you get a second entry short. And it's nice. It's a nice entry. Um, it takes a minute to work on down. But then you get, notice what happens here. You get a little double bottom here, and you actually get a second entry long, but I don't think you want to be going short. That's 3 overlapping bars, 4 overlapping bars, lots of congestion. And then you get a second entry short because you're still looking for the retest of the low too. So I really like that down. Plus, I don't have it on here. Let me go ahead and draw it. You got a little channel, a little trend line working down. That's the first break, so wait for the new low. But when we reverse here, that's 2 almost measured legs that don't make a new low, and it reverses. That is, that's a reversal type pattern. That's a failure to, a couple more attempts to go lower than this one, and you just can't do it. You really could, if you want to be real aggressive, you could almost go long right there. You really could go long. So I'm going to go ahead and circle that one in green. I like that setup, to be perfectly honest with you. It's one you got to be experienced at, so I'm going to say it's definitely aggressive, but I like that trade. And then you get a little pullback here. This is like a breakout pullback long from, we broke out here. It really retested right here. And it went lower first and then went out the upside. You figure prices are probably going to test this high. So I like that entry, even though it can't get above there. You still get enough to get your scalp, and then it kind of goes into this little flat. It's way away from the EMA, and it kind of goes flat. But you get this little failed break higher above this little double top, and look at that bearish bar. I like that for a short right there. It's a failed second entry long, and it's a little failed breakout of a little congestion area. It's a good bit away from the EMA, even though it's not real far. There's still, it's still a nice setup. Thinking that, hey, we've had the break here, the new high, we found resistance, and it's at least going to pull back to the EMA and give me a chance to get a scalp. And instead, it hesitates a minute and then turns down, and you get a trend line right there, and this really confirms it. Although I don't like that setup because it didn't break higher. You don't get the failed second entry long until here, and then that big bar. But I like that entry right there, and you really could have entered here. I think it's just real risky right at the EMA right there, so I'm not going to mark it. I didn't like it, but you get another chance here. Now you're through the EMA, you come back to test it. You do get a little break of the trend channel there, so but this thing just takes off. And then you get another chance to enter right here. You get a little more congestion. It pulls back to the EMA again and gives you a big bearish bar. And you're expecting it to test this low and maybe even this one. This is where I would have looked to exit right here. When this broke higher, I probably would have exited right here. Just to be honest with you. That's your exit point. Trying to ride this all the way to the bottom is getting a little bit risky here. So. But these were nice entries right down through here. 2 of these would have gotten you. Well, this one probably wouldn't have got you a runner, but this one definitely would have. And this one wouldn't have unless you used a limit order, but you couldn't get filled far enough back really for it to make any difference. So there's no runner regardless right there, and it just. But it's a quick, easy scalp. So. And there's a good chance you can ride it down. But if you caught a runner on any of them, you ride it down to here. And this is where I would look to exit. And then you get a correction. You had a break here. So you got to be careful about going long right here. Notice that my trend line or my support line is working across there. But you wouldn't have had this in place yet because you only had one bounce there. So that's... until this was really over and we got another bounce here, you'd probably be thinking about this when it bounced right there, but you probably wouldn't have had this low in place yet. You would have been thinking maybe up here. As you can see, that looks like that's going to be it at first, but later on I think we tested this enough times that you can kind of move it down to here. So at that point, it would have looked like you were retesting resistance here. And the main reason I like this short is because you get a failed second entry long right there and a big bearish reversal bar. So I like going short right there. It's also, but notice the new high pullback first entry, pullback second entry, it fails, and it really kind of gives you a second entry short as well. So um, I like that entry. I would look to exit when it bounced right here. And if you draw your trend line, that's the first break. So even though it's real close, but after this, I probably, when this bounced right here, I would have moved this back to where I originally had it right there. And that's one reason I like this trade. You had the one leg up, pull back, second leg up. So it looked similar to this. It looked like it was maybe going to be a repeat pattern. And you don't really get a second entry short here. So you're waiting on a possible failed second entry short, but it bounces right off that support area where it bounced a couple of times before. And everything, this is really the first pullback. Look how it kind of shot through the EMS, the first pullback. So I kind of like that to the long side. It's a little bit aggressive. There is room to get out before you get back up here. So and hopefully you saw the double channel by now, and you got to figure that prices are at least going back to here. And so that was the other reason. This is just kind of a pullback to test the EMA, to test the midline on this two-tiered channel. It tests the support area. There's a couple of different things going on there. So for that reason, I like this trade. It is a little aggressive though. So, but it turns out to be a great move. And I would have been thinking exiting here or the first bar that breaks below here, and that would have been here, and that gets you. And notice we had a close outside a new high, and then you get a little correction, and now you got a trend line off these two swings. This is, and the reason, somebody will inevitably ask me, like, why did I start it here? Because we were still working on a down move until here. This is really where the up move started or where the down move failed. And so that's really where your upward move started. So I drew it off the first two swings. It gets confirmed here, so I like that setup. This is actually supposed to be right here. That's a nice second entry long. I would have waited. I wouldn't have went long above that red bar, but when that green one bounced off the trend line, confirmed it and closed here, as soon as it broke above, I would have dropped a limit order right there, right at the top of that one, or maybe a tick in, and tried to get filled. Then it backs up again and turns up. I didn't like that one so much because it's not off the main trend line. But when it broke, notice the kind of double, triple highs right there. But when it pulled back right there, that's like a breakout pullback long. So I liked entering there. And then you get the failed second entry short. So I liked entering there. And I really thought this thing would go all the way to the highs, but it doesn't. And you actually get a break of the trend line right here. And you would have wanted to measure this leg right here when you started going higher and see if you get a measured move. And you don't quite get it, but look where that puts you, right to the top of the channel. When you couldn't get there, that's not a great sign. That's a sign that, hey, we'll probably retest this top and we may not go much higher. And so, but notice here, now you're looking for a retest, but you never get a good setup, and you just kind of go into this flat. Look how flat the EMA, look at the matching highs, matching lows. Just wait and see what happens. And of course, you get the failed break lower, and guaranteed a lot of people were entering short right there. And all the smart traders wait on that failed break lower because you're looking for a retest. Although you may not get it because of the range, you still got plenty of room to get out before you get back to here or there. And so you want to take that trade, and it turns out to be a good one. And I would have probably exited once we found resistance right there again, and you would have got out right near the top. And that got you into the 2 o'clock hour, so I didn't mark anything else. So I got several different types of emails today. Some of you said, hey, it was nice to have some movement. I read it pretty good. And then I get some more from others, like it really threw me off. How did you find the two-tier channel? Well, you really couldn't find it until you made this high right here. And then you just draw that line off those first two swings, and you drop it down, and you put it there. And then you just try to see if you can find a midpoint. And if you drag it up through here, it kind of fits right in here, midpoint. And so when it bounces here, so then you know where to look for the bounce if it goes through the strong support here, right here, and guess where it bounces? Right there. And so now you're really looking for prices to go higher. The only reason you really take this trade is the trap and the turn down off the midline, because you never know that this thing just keeps going lower. So a couple of different things that you got to be aware of there. And it really was nice to have some good movement today, and it wasn't it wasn't a hard day. There were a couple areas where it got a little tricky, right in here and right in here, and and of course right back up here. But if you're seeing the big picture and you know there's a two-tiered channel working lower here, then all of this bounce here and this bounce here all makes sense, and this target up in here makes total sense. And then this target up here makes sense because it's a range as well. So you could have played this either way, but if you had them both, it really, really helps. So um, always look for the bigger pictures. And it really helps. And until you get it, and what I told the other trader that contacted me was, until you get enough price action for the bigger picture, play the shorter term trends. And you can see you got one working up, down, you get a break, and it tries to make a retest. It doesn't, but that tells you something. But then you got one working up, you get a break, a new high. Then you got one working down, you get a break and a new low. And then you got one working up, a break, and a new high. And so if you just play the short term ones, that gets you into um, figuring out where the bigger picture is. It gives you a little more price action. So that's how you got to do it until you get enough price action. And a lot of times if you follow, if you look at my midday charts and stuff like that, you'll see, I'll tell you, sometimes there's just not enough price action yet to find the bigger picture. And I might have a couple of different ideas on there that I'm watching until one of them proves that it's probably in play. And sometimes I'll take one of them off. Sometimes they both work out, just like today, the range and the two-tiered downward channel worked out. So it's, and you could have maybe even had one. I think what this trader that was confused, they were maybe working one up like so. And that probably fits. So you can't even say that it's wrong. Look at that. I mean, it really does fit, but it doesn't. But you don't get the confirmation of the trend line here. It goes right through, so it doesn't really help you. Where you really don't get it here either. But you should have at least gotten a bounce down here, and then you see the midline coming into play, and you can see how it kind of gaps. There's that little gap right there. And if you pull that down just a little, you can see that it closed and then on its high and then open on the next bar. It did back up and fill the little gap, but that tells you that there's something there, and that's always, it did the same thing right here on the midline. Look at it. If you adjust it just a little, it closed on the bottom, open. It always gaps over those, and a lot of times it won't even back up and fill the gap. It did both of those times. But that's telling you something is often there. I don't know why it does that, but it does. And you'll see it over and over consistently. So it tells you that something is going on at that location. And notice right here, I closed above the line and then closed below the line. Even though it didn't gap, it still, the line affected it. And it's just amazing how that does that. And it just reconfirms that, hey, you probably got it right. So, but anyway, not much more I can say about today. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.